So let's talk about the art of networking. Everyone talks big game about what networking is or how you should do it, but no one seems to understand the basics of it. People actually don't realize how big their existing network is. If you're watching this video, you probably are going to a university, you work somewhere, or have graduated recently from your college. You would know at least 10 people. I'm not saying you have a lot of friends, but if you know at least 10 people from your university or your work, those 10 people would know 10 people further, and their network would have tens and hundreds of more people. So if you just multiply all of this, you're already at 1,000 people that you can potentially call your network. And that's the very first step, identifying what your network is. Imagine you open up LinkedIn right now and you go to your connections list and you open up your first degree connections, the people which you are directly connected with. Those people would have a lot more connections, and those people would have even more connections in the later stages. So that's how you build your second and third degree network. And that's the key point in identifying what your network is. Now, when you talk about networking, a lot of people think about just sending off some cold messages, cold emails to people, copy pasting one message over to the other, just changing name and the company title from person to person, and then they call it networking. Oh, I networked with 100 people today. But no, that's not how it works. I'm not saying cold messaging or cold emailing does not work. It does wonders for people in sales and revenue and whatnot. But when you're networking or connecting with someone, the first message, if you send that out as a cold message, that just sends a message and seeks of desperation, and you don't want to do that. You ideally want the connection that you're building with someone to be a very long-term and high-value connection, and that way you and the other person can make the most out of it. I always talk about this with my followers on Instagram or people who schedule calls with me, that the first message you send to someone should add some value to their life, and if you're not adding value, you cannot expect them to give you a reply or even give you their time of the day. When you send out that first message to someone as a cold email or a cold message, it just ruins the entire conversation from there on. Some people might reply to you from that cold message, but most of them will not. It just reeks of desperation, and you don't really want to start your connection or your network on that particular note. The way I see it is, a lot of the times people also message me on Instagram asking their questions, their doubts, or something they might have a problem with or an issue with, and asking me to resolve it. But I usually don't end up replying to those comments or questions on my DMs because there's just so many of them, and it's not possible for me to humanly go through all of them. Now put yourself in the shoes of someone you are sending out a cold message to. They are probably the same. They get hundreds of messages a day. They are probably super busy with their timelines, and they won't really have the time to reply to you. The way you add value to someone is by actually researching what they do, where they work, and how have they progressed in their career. Now, once you have researched about all of this, it's pretty easy to figure out what is it that they currently are looking for in their life at that particular moment. For example, I started posting about all of these pictures on my story where I'm speaking or being a judge at a hackathon, and a few of my followers noticed. And the crazy part is, one of them actually reached out to me asking if I wanted to be the guest speaker and a guest judge at a hackathon that they are hosting in their university. And that immediately added value to my life, and I was bound to open that message and reply to them. Now, if in the future that particular person goes on to ask me something about any kind of questions that they have, or if they need any help from me in the near future, they're probably going to be one of the top ones that I end up replying to. And that's just the way it works. You should first try to add value to someone and then ask for a help later on. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to building a network or growing your connections is actually knowing how to start a conversation. And it never fails to amaze me that how many people keep sending the same message over and over again, hoping for different results. If you don't change anything, you're not going to get any changes in the replies that you're getting. It's just as simple as that. The way I see making new connections is very comparable to you making new friends and actually talking to them. You don't want to be putting out your skill sets, your resume, or anything of that sort in the first message itself, because it just ruins the communication from there on. Something I like to follow is called the Ford method. It's FORD, and it's essentially the 4 pillars on which you can start your conversation on. F stands for family, O stands for occupation, R for recreation, and D for whatever the dreams are in the future or at the moment. Now, once you have this particular framework, what you want to do ideally is just scroll through their LinkedIn for a few minutes, and you would know what kind of posts they interact with, what kind of posts they post, where do they work, what do they do for recreation, and what are they currently working on, or what are their plans for the near future. Once you have researched all of this and put it all together in your mind, it's actually really easy to just go on there and start a conversation, ask them questions about it, and so on and so forth. One example that comes to my mind is I was recently talking to this newly funded YC company's founder, and I actually went through their post about what they are doing, how they release a nightly build, and what they do in order to achieve that. And I kind of understood, I digested all of that information and took it all in, and then started asking them questions about how the process looks like, what kind of customers do they serve to, and so on and so forth. And this is the human nature that people love to speak about themselves or the work that they are doing. And it's a very, very beautiful thing once you get to know that. Imagine if someone comes up to you and asks you about a project that you did in your grade 10. You would be very keen to speak about that. And the same goes for every single human on this planet. If they are working on something which is really interesting and motivating for them, they would love to talk more about that. And once you're past the initial ice-breaking period, it's really easy to carry on that conversation from there and start adding value to your conversation about how you could possibly help them with that project that they've been working on, or how you can arrange a possible meetup with them for a common hobby or a recreation activity that you might have. Now, this is a very common framework that a lot of people use, right from sales department to a lot of people actually networking who I have met. Now, this is a framework which a lot of people use, whether they are in sales or actually people who have even met in real life use the Ford method. But my strategy is a little bit different from that. What my morning routine has become is, instead of doom scrolling on Instagram and wasting my time that way, I just open up LinkedIn and find 10 people who are potentially very interesting to me and might be working in the same domain as me. By the way, you can also set this up using ChatGPT tasks, and you can just ask it to send you links of 10 people who might be potentially interesting to you every morning, and then you can just go on from there. But once I have these 10 people in mind, what I like to do is I just go through their profile, what they like or dislike, what kind of posts do they write, do they interact with people, do they write comments on other people's, and have they written up any blogs. And once I have all of this information loaded up in my mind, I send them a connection request with a very thoughtful note which says, hey, I read your blog about credit card applications and it really intrigued me, and I'm going through something similar myself right now. I would love to chat more about it. And what that does is it would actually send them a notification on their phone or laptop, whatever they are using, and they would be able to see a very small preview of your message until credit card applications and their blog, which you talked about in your message. And as soon as they see this, they would go like, oh, this person read my blog and is probably inquiring about that. Let me just open up and check what the message is. And when they read the entire message about me asking them to chat more with me and so on, it really ignites a spark in their brain like, okay, let me just send a very quick reply to this person, clearing whatever doubts they might have when they were reading my blog post. Because that blog post, when they originally wrote it, it must have taken them countless hours to actually research and write about that particular blog post. And you actually reading and interacting with their blog post really makes them feel special in that particular moment, and it might spark a reply out of them. Now, one of the ways that has gotten me the most benefit out of my networking is actually attending conferences, whether those are student conferences held in your own university, or those are conferences organized by big companies and which are their annual organizations. But if you can go to one of these conferences and can afford to do so, you should 110% do that. And most of the times you won't even need to pay for the conference, because if you're a student or an early graduate, you can just send an email to the organizer or the PR team of the organizers asking them for a potential free pass since you're a student and you cannot afford the particular conference, and mentioning how you would just like to go ahead and experience the conference for yourself and spread news about it on your campus or in the club that you might be a part of. Once you send this email, 5 times out of 10, you would get a reply from them, either asking for more information or actually sending you a pass. I've scored multiple conference passes this way, and it really works in the long run. But coming back to the topic, when you're attending these conferences, your primary goal as an individual should be to meet as many new people as you can. You need to be a bit out of your comfort zone to actually go up to someone and say, hey, can I take a couple of your minutes? I would actually love to chat with you. It really requires some sort of courage, but just know that your odds of success are way higher than you think they are. 9 times out of 10, when you ask someone, hey, I would love to chat more about you on this, they would say yes. But if you're unlucky with that 1 out of 10 times, you can always go to the next group of people and have a chat with them instead. But a lot of people ask me, what do I even have the chat about? I don't know anything about them and they don't know anything about me. What are we going to talk about? Again, research helps you solve this particular problem. Before you go to any conference, you should ideally research about what kind of people are going to be coming and what are the topics that are going to be the key part of that conference, what companies are coming to that conference to display their product and demo their product, who are the engineers those are going to be attended. Usually people like to post something like this over on their LinkedIn that I'm going to be attending X, Y, and Z conference held in Las Vegas on May 29th or something of that sort. And once you see some of those posts, you ideally want to go to their profile and do the same research process and rinse and repeat that for everyone that you see and would love to potentially meet at that conference. And once you have all of that, you should prepare a few things that you can talk about with them, basically applying the Ford framework or the framework that I mentioned that I use personally. When you go up to someone and ask them, hey, can I chat with you? From there on, it's really like the LinkedIn conversation that we have been talking about so far in this video. You try to ask them and make them talk about something that they have been working on or what their dream is. And once you get the conversation going, you try to listen very carefully to what they are saying. You collate all of the information that you just heard from the research that you have previously done. And once you collate all of this, you tell them how you can potentially add value to what their dream is or what they have been working on. And once you get in the habit of give first and ask later, you'll see tremendous results with your networking and the kind of connections that you create in your life. This give first, ask later tactic is a very common tactic used by all the sales representatives around the world. If you, for example, go on your T-Mobile and you are trying to cancel your plan, they would do everything in their power to stop you from canceling by giving you free discounts and so much more. And then ultimately later, when you do decide to stay on T-Mobile, they would start adding in a few more perks for you to buy, like international roaming and whatnot. So they're giving you a discount first to stop you from going, and then they would ask for more once they have you logged in. And also for anyone asking if this video has been too long, but I have broken down everything that we just talked about in this video in a document format as well, along with some message examples that you can send as a first message. The link would be in the description box somewhere, and if you just click on it, it's free for you. And I've put together my experience from 3 years of networking with professionals, whether that's top level executives to very early stage startup founders or just talking to my colleagues at the university. If you want it, just check out the link in the description and you should have it. And if you have previously attended any of the conferences, I would love to hear about your experience with networking with different professionals at that conference in the comments down below, and would love to chat more about it. It would be amazing if you like this video, and if you love this kind of educational content about networking, universities, getting a job and so much more, I have a whole bunch of content coming your way. So consider subscribing to the channel as well. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.